people pushed and she fall down. There is no support proper previously. First aid they have not given properly. Yeah, in auto she has taken. She has taken in auto. There is no police support or nothing. Responsibility is total government only.
Now, this felicitation ceremony was planned to begin at the Vidhan Sauda on those iconic steps there and conclude at the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bengaluru. That distance is about 2 kilometers. This led to massive crowd gathering in a confined area. The situation was further complicated after the police refused permission for an open-top bus parade. Till the last minute, there was no confirmation whether that open-top bus parade for that 2-kilometer stretch would actually happen. It added to the overall chaos because people didn't know which way to go anymore. But here's the twist. On the 3rd of June, the day of the IPL final, Karnataka State Cricket Association wrote to the state government seeking permission to hold this felicitation ceremony on the grand steps of the Vidhan Sauda if RCB won. The state government wrote to the police then seeking their opinion about this proposal. Sources in the police department have told CNN News 18 that the police were not in favor of allowing this event, and yet the state facilitated it. Even now coming out and saying that all we did was facilitate it. It wasn't our event. But why did they do that? Why was the daring need to hold that event even when the men on ground, the police that were meant to be there for security, weren't prepared for clearly what was a logistical nightmare?
ಮ್ಯಾನೇಜ್ಮೆಂಟ್ ಸರಿಯಾಗಿದ್ರೆ ಸರಿಯಾಗೋದು 3 ಗಂಟೆಗೆ ಬಂದು ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಂಡಿದ್ದು ಗೇಟ್ ನಂಬರ್ 7 ಬಂದು ನಿಂತ್ಕೊಳ್ಳಿ ಅಂತಂದ್ರು. ಇವಾಗ 5 ಗಂಟೆ 20 ನಿಮಿಷ ಆದ್ರೂ ಒಬ್ಬರನ್ನು ಬಿಟ್ಟಿಲ್ಲ ಸರ್.
30 ಜನ ಒಂದೇ ಸಲ ಬಿದ್ರು. ಒಂದು 1000 ಜನ ಅಲ್ಲಿಂದ ಸರ್ ಬಂದೇ ಬಿದ್ದಿ ಮೇಲೆ ಅದಕ್ಕೊಂಡ್ರು ಎತ್ತುತ್ತಿದ್ರು ಕೇಳಲಿಲ್ಲ. ಹಂಗೆ ಮುಂದೆ 4-5 ಜನ ಬಿದ್ದವರು. ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ಬ್ರದರು ಸೇರಿಸಿ ನಮ್ಮನ್ನು ಕೆಳಗೆ ಹಾಕೊಂಡು ತುಳಿದ್ರು ಸರ್.
ಒಂದು ಗೇಟ್ ತೆಗ್ದಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಆ ಪೂರ್ತಿ ಗೇಟ್ ತೆಗಿಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಅದು ಮುಂದ್ಗಡೆ ಆದಂಗೆ ತಳ್ಳಬೇಕಾಗಿತ್ತು. ಏನ್ ಮಾಡ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು, ಜನರಲ್ಲೇ ಇಲ್ಲಿದ್ರು. ಅದು ಮುಂದ್ಗಡೆ ತಳ್ಳಕಾಯ್ತಾರಲ್ಲ, ಜನರು ಫೋರ್ಸ್ ಆಗ್ತಾ ಇದ್ರು. ಅದಕ್ಕೆ ಅದು ಒಂದು ಗೇಟಿಂದ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕಾದ್ರೆ ಅದು ಆಯ್ತಾ ಇರಲ್ಲ. ಇಷ್ಟೇ ಆಗಲ್ಲ ಜಾಗದಲ್ಲಿ 1000 ಜನ ಹೋಗ್ಬೇಕು ಅಂದ್ರೆ ಹೆಂಗಾಗುತ್ತೆ?
Now, the Congress government in Karnataka has absolved itself. They've decided to pass the blame to anybody else that they can find. The Chief Minister blamed the Karnataka cricket body, the KSCA, saying that they didn't organize the event and it was only meant to provide security, forgetting that it is exactly that security that was seen to be nowhere, as eyewitnesses claimed. The Deputy Chief Minister of the state, D.K. Shivkumar, who today got very emotional when he was talking about the tragedy, blamed the fans. He said that there was a lot of excitement in all of these youngsters who came out to celebrate the win after 18 long years. Cops can't be blamed, he said. It was the crowd that became uncontrollable. The man in charge for any state's law and order situation is the Home Minister. G. Parameshwara in this case blamed the franchise as well. G. Parameshwara, the Home Minister of Karnataka, said that it was the RCB and the state cricketing body who wanted to host the event and all the government did was facilitate it. Here again, the Congress forgets that it was the poor management at the stadium, the poor management leading up to the event as well, that eventually caused the stampede and led to the loss of 11 lives.
Nobody has expected so much of crowd will come because the capacity of the stadium is only 35,000, but 2 to 3 lakh people have come to participate in the celebration.
We didn't make a request to the RCB or the KSCA. They organized this.
Yes, sir.
The part of it was government also felt that we also should facilitate. That's all. After all, it is Bengaluru, Bengaluru team. The government also felt that let us be part of that celebration. That's all. Beyond that, we didn't ask. We are going to do it. RCB and KSCA, they are the ones who brought the team to Bengaluru.
Though it has happened very unexpectedly, we never no one expected such a crowd. After 18 years, I don't know what was boiling in the youngsters. They all came.
An FIR has now been registered against RCB, the cricketing franchise and the cricketing body of Karnataka as well. And News18 has accessed that FIR copy which names RCB as accused number 1. DNA Entertainment, the event management company that was responsible for holding this event, is accused number 2, and the Karnataka State Cricket Association Commissioner is accused number 3 in this particular case. Bengaluru police have blamed them for not adhering to the advice of the police to give them more time to make adequate arrangements. This is in line with what we told you earlier, that the police was not in favor of holding this particular event. It was going to be a logistical nightmare, which they had warned the state government of. The Bengaluru police now saying that we had warned the state cricketing body, the KSCA, and RCB team management as well, but both of them wanted to go ahead with this event. In fact, what we're also learning is that the government has decided to now hand over the case to the CID from the Bengaluru police. The CID is now going to be investigating this particular case, this FIR that has been registered against 3 individuals or 3 entities. Chinnaswamy, my colleague, now joins us, who's accessed these details of the FIR for us. Rohini, if you could take our viewers through what exactly the allegations are, what the sections of the BNSR that have been invoked against these 3 entities?
Very clearly, the FIR is very interesting because it also is a stand that the state government has been taking, as well as the Bengaluru police have been taking in this particular stampede. They have laid the blame completely on first Royal Challengers Bengaluru franchise, and the second one on DNA Ventures, which is the entertainment company, and thirdly on the KSCA administration. What they said is, despite while the letter of was submitted by KSA asking, seeking permission, when the permission was denied, despite that, they did not pay heed. Rather, they continued and they decided that they will go ahead with the victory celebrations. What we also get to know from our sources is that there was a certain amount of pressure, especially from the RCB team, because many of the international players wanted to fly back home. And so since KSCA had invited them to Bengaluru, there was pressure also to conduct the event. And that is why they went ahead and they decided that they will conduct it at Chinnaswamy Stadium. And so the state government, as we have been hearing from the Chief Minister, Home Minister and Deputy Chief Minister, saying the fact that they participated in the celebrations because it was a Bengaluru team. Right now, the owners and the FIR very clearly that CNN and News18 has access, clearly says that the 3 entities to be blamed are Royal Challengers Bengaluru, DNA, as well as KSCA. And they very clearly also, in detail, in a timeline, explained how when on the 3rd of June, when the first letter was denied, and there were talks with KSCA, the inspector of Kaban Park Police Station. Now, we should understand that Chinnaswamy Stadium falls under that particular police jurisdiction. He explained it to the officials that they needed a little time to get things in order because there were celebrations the previous night. They need to get better deployment. I also was speaking to several senior police officers, and they were also saying that there were events that have been conducted earlier in Bengaluru as well, where nearly 20 lakh people had come together. And that example is of the funeral of Puneet Rajkumar, a mega star actor here. And even then, that was conducted without any issues. Then this particular one is because the pressure and especially the 3 entities here, RCB, KSCA, as well as DNA, did not listen or pay heed to the warnings and advised the police not to go ahead despite denying them. Because then what happened is it became a political approach. They did because once the government also stepped in, then they were the entire event was chalked out. They also said that the way the tweets also had been, the information that was given that a victory parade will take place. This is despite the fact that the Home Minister had announced there will be no victory parade. When an announcement was made, more people started joining in. And that is why the police have been saying that they've been analyzing the tweets, especially from the RCB's Twitter handle. And the more they had been building up, especially for this particular event, that caused people to come in larger numbers because as a very senior officer told me, it was almost free for all. The word free itself actually attracted a lot more people from across Bengaluru to try and come and witness what they thought was a historic moment, not only for Bengaluru, but for the state of Karnataka as well. But this FIR also very clearly talks about how that especially when the permissions were, and they were told that the deployments will not be and preparations will not be in place, the owners also, the police have put it on the KSCA for not having better crowd management, for not having better medical facilities, and for not and to ensure that when they're talking about ticketing, why the entire process was not fulfilled in the manner in which an event has to happen. So clearly now, the Bengaluru police with this FIR, and now that has been handed over to the CID, will conduct this investigation. We also know that this court case is also being heard in the Karnataka High Court. clearly
So,
now,
Rohini, there are
we've
now
seen-
parallel investigations perhaps that are going to run, because there was also a magisterial inquiry that was earlier initiated by the state government?
Yes, absolutely, and but now that will hold in the terms that we know that the Bengaluru DC also said a notice will be issued, but he specifically said that the notice will be issued to the Bengaluru Police Commissioner, to the to RCB as well, KSCA, and certain other entities to be a part of this magisterial investigation. That's one investigation that will take place. The CID investigation will be another, and then we know how the court is. It's being argued in the courts as well. So clearly here, now the responsibility, like I was saying, through the day also, through our channel, we have been saying that there is a need to pin down the responsibility in certain bodies. This FIR now has shown that the police are, which they have been saying repeatedly, that their warnings were not paid heed to,
Right.
is now reflecting in this particular FIR.
Right, Rohini, thank you so much for getting us the latest on that front. So investigations are taking pace there. Many would say that this FIR perhaps is 24 hours too late, because that's how long it's taken for this FIR to be registered against the state cricketing body, against RCB and the event management company. After 11 lives were lost, many are still injured and recuperating in the hospitals across Bengaluru. Let's open this up to our panelists who join us. Charu Pragya, spokesperson of the BJP, Deepak Timaya, spokesperson of the Congress, former IPS officer Vikram Singh, and activist Brinda Adige. She's a Bengalurian herself. But Deepak Timaya, let me begin by asking you. We've heard the Chief Minister, the Deputy Chief Minister, the Home Minister all come out and say that it wasn't the state government's responsibility. All we were to do was lend a supporting hand. Is that really the case? Can the state government actually pass on the blame to the state cricketing body, which also they are responsible for, and the RCB?
The CM was so sure of what transpired, what happened, what occurred, and what actually led to this kind of a tragedy. There was no need for an investigation, or there was no need for a magisterial inquiry, right? And the CM himself would have declared that I know it all, and this is why that I say that, you know, these are the people to be blamed, and these are the people who are supposed to be, what do you say, made responsible, and so on. If at all the government has ordered an inquiry, it's only because the government doesn't have all the facts on hand as of now. It has to be investigated. But let me tell you, I don't want to actually politicize. I'm sure that the BJP is jumping to make this into some kind of a political issue, because, you know, because we are also as saddened, as, remorseful, as sorry as anybody else. And to actually think that the Congress is celebrating the death of 11 people, and they just don't feel anything about the death of so many young people, is nothing more than being just absolutely naive.
Why is it naive, sir? Why are those questions not valid? Because while the stampede took place, a little after that is when that ceremony was taking place inside the Chinnaswamy Stadium, where all of the government representatives were there. Why can't those questions be asked of the Congress? Because even after the stampede took place, the felicitation ceremony with the government representatives still took place inside the stadium.
Okay, the government was not absolutely aware of, you know, how many people were killed, perhaps because, you know, the officials inside, or perhaps even the DCM or anybody else had not got the exact figures. And I can tell you, that is not an excuse at all. But let me tell you, I'm
glad you say that, because that is clearly not an excuse.
That's not an excuse. And who is actually making it an excuse? Let me tell you, there can be such errors when so many people, I'm sure the government itself was taken by surprise. I'm sure that
they shouldn't have been. They shouldn't have been. If free passes were announced by the RCB, advertised by the RCB, what were you expecting? Were you expecting people to not turn up via all the metro stations that were open around Kabban Park or around the Chinnaswamy Stadium? Were you expecting people to not come out there?
That is why the government is saying that the responsibility completely lies on the RCB, because, you know, when you have actually given out, announced about the free passes, and when you actually
why did the state government give the permission then? Why was the Chief Minister and the Deputy Chief Minister with the team holding the trophy, parading it while people were dying outside?
The BJP itself has tweeted and later on deleted with such cowardice about, you know, why the people were not allowed to celebrate with the team going in an open bus. This is what they've actually, you want to see the tweet? I can actually send it to you. I'm sure it's everywhere.
Sure.
And now
And
the
those
BJP is
questions too
telling
were
that-
being asked because of why there was not enough personnel put on ground or enough management. But Charu Pragya,
yeah, but let
Charu
me tell
Pragya,
you,
sure.
let me tell you, let me tell you very clearly, and I think it's very simple. This was not expected, one thing, and I'm sure that there was some kind of euphoria. I'm sure that the government also must have got carried away. Which
I
I'm
don't
sure
know
is
why this
something that we
euphoria
have
is
to
something that's
think
being
about
spoken
and
of by
discuss
you and by the
every
Deputy Chief
But
Minister
let
of
me
the
tell
state,
you that,
because I'm
if at
sorry
all
if
everything
people
had
who
been
have
taken-
lost their lives in that, if they had to pay it for their euphoria. I mean, I don't think that's something that you should be, or anybody, any politician for that matter should be saying. But Charu Pragya, the state government says we've just only begun the investigation. Let the investigation take place. We'll figure out who's responsible and then fix accountability. Why jump the gun is what the Congress says.
11 lives were lost. Over 50 were injured, not due to violence, not due to a natural disaster, but because of arrogance and apathy, which we just saw on display from the Congress spokesperson. You know why this happened? Because accountability, this government has decided it can shrug off conveniently. So they can celebrate on stage, pass the trophy around as if they were the ones who won it, but not take accountability. While people were bleeding and dying outside, the Chief Minister and Deputy Chief Minister of Karnataka was celebrating inside. That's the extent and the depth of their apathy. They continued to celebrate while the news of the stampede was trickling in. Now you are saying that the government has done nothing wrong. Let me update you. There is something called as a crowd assessment. Every government authorities, they do crowd assessment. You did no crowd assessment, absolutely none. When the police said that this is too big a crowd, so handed at such a short notice, you did not pay heed to it. If you were so concerned about the safety of people, why did your chief minister even attend the event? Now let me tell you, there was no barricading. There was no plan for crowd dispersal. Anytime a large gathering happens in any corner of the world, there is a plan in place. There are ambulance zones. None of this existed. In spite of that, you have the audacity to come on national television and pretend you have done nothing wrong. And it shocks me, right? The level of your apathy in death, it shocks me. It makes me realize the way you have been governing Karnataka. It is really, Bhagwan Bharose. That's the only word I can use. This was not a human tragedy. This was actually an administrative manslaughter sponsored by you. You want to enjoy the photo op, but run away from responsibility. And last thing, and very importantly, if something happens at the Kumbh, it is Yogi Ji's fault. If there is stampede outside a theatre in Hyderabad, it is Allu Arjun's fault. But here, you have a chief minister celebrating RCB on stage.
But speaking
it is
of
the
Allu
crowd's
Arjun, it
fault.
looks like that same template is being followed here, because here too, the management, event management company, RCB is all held responsible. The same that we saw in Allu Arjun's case as well. But Vikram Singh, let me begin by asking you. It is not a surprise that the police on ground were outnumbered. I mean, that's something to have been expected, isn't it? Should there not have been better measures to be put in place? Maybe some roads, some metro stations, some modes of transport could have been blocked off to ensure that these kind of surge was not seen. 32,000 is the capacity of the stadium. Over a lakh people turned up. Obviously, the infrastructure is not adept to deal with that.
Poonam ji, good evening, and good evening, esteemed panelists. I would say the police can never, I repeat, never be taken by surprise. And it is expected that no professional police force or the government can allow grass to grow underneath their feet. You have to anticipate, foresee, plan, and be a worst case scenario. Plan for a worst case scenario, and there has to be a backup for a backup for a backup. Therefore, to say that something terrible happened and I was not aware, then I'm sorry, then you don't deserve to wear the uniform and don't deserve to be in office also. You're supposed to anticipate. Bengaluru is the IT capital of the country, and I had expected the drone also to give the advantage of sighting, assessing the crowds, and giving it to the smart control room that Bengaluru has. As also the fact that you have intelligence reports and inputs from all corners, the CCTV footages that indicate to the last man what is the depth of the crowd. But we bungled up in multiple. Bungling up, number one, we said that the doors will be, we announced at 7 o'clock. Then we said that this is free for all, first come, first served. Then we said that the capacity is not equal to the task. Then we did not have the reinforcement. The police, in such cases, when any profit-making organization organizes such a tamasha or a jamboree, then they have to pay in advance for all the policemen deployed. Was this done? This was not done. There are multiple fault lines, and I'm sure the Karnataka High Court has taken a suo motu cognizance, and I wish, had this been done earlier, a case registered, there would not have been a need for the Karnataka High Court to take cognizance and order for this would not have happened. But now that the FIR has been lodged, the truth ultimately, Poonamji, is very simple. The police can never claim helplessness with the cooperation, without the cooperation, and in spite of the cooperation. It is for the police to have ensured fail-proof, foolproof, invincible security arrangements.
But the police did warn the state government that this is not something that is feasible. That there have been celebrations through the night, till late to the night, the previous night as well. We are, as it is, stretched thin. From Vidhan Soudha steps to Chinnaswamy Stadium, it's not something that we would want you to do. That red flag was waved by the police.
All the advice is not accepted by the government, is from the police. I had expected a lot more from the police also. They should have risen to the occasion and been equal to the task. It was a different matter that they were outnumbered heavily. They should have got their reinforcement. And again, I hear a story, I would not believe that it is not true, that we were tired. Since when have the police got tired? Today, I may have a bullet in me, even then I'll not be tired. I'm supposed to give a befitting reply to the adversary and to any situation that comes my way. And I would like to assure you, Poonamji, Bengaluru police is a very professional force. Obviously, there is more to it than what meets the eye. There was too much of pressure on them so that they succumbed to illegal, illegitimate and unreasonable expectations of the political bosses, and the rest is history.
And that pressure seems to be the only thing that explains this, Brinda Adige, isn't it? Because there was a tearing hurry within 24 hours, less than that, from the IPL winning match to the event taking place. There obviously wasn't enough time to put arrangements in place. Why was the state government nudging the police to get it done when they were very clearly underconfident in doing it? That just shows that all stakeholders involved are not on the same page. And that's the biggest and the first issue with this entire thing.
You're absolutely right. All the stakeholders not on the same page, and each of them palming it off to say it wasn't our celebration, it was their celebration. They asked me to do this, they asked me to. What are you sitting there? What is your role as the government?
True. To
get in inputs and decide accordingly in the best interest of the citizens. Over here it is the fans. Now on one count, the government, who the politicians, the ruling people, did not listen to the police. And like Sir says, the police should have risen to the occasion. Yes, but that said, I also have a question as to why no FIR registered on BCCI as well as KSA, because they are equally accountable and they are equally responsible.
The KSA is named in this FIR that has been registered now. The CEO of the KSA is named as one of the accused. The BCCI also was one of those entities that washed their hands off. They said IPL for us was over when IPL was over on the 3rd, and this wasn't an event that we were in the know of. That was one of the first responses that came to the fore from the BCCI.
Now that will come out from the investigations that the police are conducting. It will come out whether who was in know of it and who was not in the know of it. But everything said and done, my question again is just what you have been asking and everybody else. What was this tearing hurry that you have to felicitate the players at Vidhan Soudha, knowing that this was the kind of crowd that was already present? Now let us remember, the RCB and everybody else involved put it out on all social media about free passes, about having this felicitation, about having this celebration, harping on this 18-year-long vanvas that was there. What were they expecting? If there is a free pass, obviously they will be coming in. But like Sir is asking, this was trickling in. People were trickling in from morning 11. All the metros were full. The Bangalore City Police has always stood up to all of these various challenges. We know how beautifully and professionally they functioned during the New Year celebrations. And they started to cordon off and to block roads and people and traffic coming in almost 7-8 hours before the celebrations of New Year. Why did you not anticipate these things? Why were you not ready?
Absolutely.
I completely agree. People were tired.
Absolutely. And whatever may be the challenges, if there is an event that is being held, even for the Chief Minister to come out and say that we didn't organize this, but security was our prerogative and was our responsibility, that too, Deepak Timaya, was barely there. A lot of eyewitnesses, survivors, families of the victims, all have come out and said that there wasn't enough help available.
See, now to say that the police actually did not want this to happen, but it was because of the police inability to convince the political leadership that this happened or something like that is something that has to be questioned, investigated and reported. But let me tell you very simple. This can happen even when you're prepared for months, like in case of Kumbh Mela or whatever it is, because when even with a lot of preparation, that things can go wrong. I'm not saying that, like I said, let me make it very clear, nobody is trying to, absorb themselves. All that we are trying to say, you can raise your finger, but you can just wait till I finish.
Then why do you keep drawing the comparison of other instances where this is happening?
About what happens in a BJP
we asked for accountability back then, we'll ask for accountability to be fixed now as well.
So agitated, but let me tell you, it's the first time it's happening.
Charu Pragya, let him finish and let's not take personal pot shots at each other. I have very limited time left. Deepak Timaya, please make your point before I get in Charu Pragya.
The point is very simple
Deepak
and
Timaya,
clear.
don't take personal pot shots. Please just make your point.
What is the personal pot shot? This is nothing. I'm not talking about any particular person. I'm speaking about a government. Can't I speak about government? Don't have a right to speak about it. Do I have only the right to speak about the Congress government, that you also can just sit and talk about as if it is the first time that's
But the
ever
Congress government is the one in power in Karnataka. If there are 11 lives that have been lost because of poor crowd control and mismanagement, who do you think the question should be asked of? Not the Congress, is it?
We should investigate. That's all I'm trying to tell you. We should investigate. If at all the government says we are not going to investigate, we are just going to...
So why was the FIR filed only now then? What took over 24 hours for the police to file that FIR? Deepak Timaya.
Because let me tell you, are you also as a journalist, are you suggesting that the government makes more knee-jerk decisions like this, or should it do things judiciously?
I don't know if filing an FIR is a knee-jerk reaction, sir. If there's a crime or FIR needs to be filed.
Let me tell you something. This has to be investigated. This has to be questioned.
Yes, and the first step of an investigation is the FIR, which has been filed 24 hours later. But Charu Pragya, you had a point to make. Go ahead.
Yeah, because this Congress spokesperson is talking about political leadership. My pointed question is, while you got the news of people dying outside, this particular Congress leadership continued with the felicitation ceremony. Now, that is inhuman. I cannot define it any other way. Please give me a justification for that. This simply was a rebranding exercise grabbed by Congress in the garb of celebrating an RCB win. Full stop. There is no other explanation to it. And his arrogance even now in not acknowledging that, yes, okay, mishaps can happen, accidents can happen, terrible tragedies have happened. But what was the reaction of your leadership in the face of such a tragedy? Passing a trophy around and making sure the correct photos were clicked of you. That is what you did in the face of a tragedy. Do not forget that. Let that haunt you till your last day.
And the first reactions that came in from across the government in Karnataka was that we were not responsible. That it was an RCB and a KSCA event.
This show is only about, lambasting the Congress.
No, it's not about lambasting the Congress. It's about seeking accountability, sir. And if the Congress is in power in Karnataka, then those questions will be asked of the Congress party.
And we are not bothered about it. It's only that when some people actually have taken a photograph.
But why should questions not be asked of the Karnataka government and its politicians taking pictures with the RCB team when 11 people were dying outside?
At all. Are you very sure that the DCM actually knew that 11 people had died when he was taking the photographs? Are you 100% sure about it?
Because he came out a little while before that and said we apologize about it.
The Deputy Chief Minister. But actually when the war is happening, somebody gives a political speech, that's perfectly all right. But let me tell you, it's a mistake. Let me tell you, it's a mistake on part of somebody which will be corrected.
I don't know if the loss of 11 lives, some of them kids, can be termed as a mistake. But accountability needs to be fixed and somebody needs to be held responsible for these 11 lives that have been lost. I have to leave it there. I thank you all for joining us here on this edition of The Right Stand. Shifting focus now to Pakistan and what's been transpiring in our neighborhood. The Asian Development Bank has approved an $800 million bailout package for Pakistan despite India's vehement objections. This package comes just days after Islamabad secured a $1 billion package from the International Monetary Fund. The new ADB aid is meant to improve public financial management in Pakistan, at least on paper. Out of the $800 million package, $300 million are meant to be a policy-based loan, while the rest is program-based guarantee. The ADB will be working with Pakistan over the next few months to chalk out that entire vision. Now, New Delhi has always been opposed to this kind of financial assistance to Pakistan, more so even now after the Pahalgam attack, because Pakistan's role in terror financing in the region is well known. India had cautioned the Asian Development Bank regarding the possibility of misuse of its resources. The linkage between Pakistan's increase in expenditure on its military as opposed to on development cannot be fully explained solely in terms of its domestic resource mobilization. That's something that India highlighted. We also told the Asian Development Bank that Pakistan's tax to GDP ratio had dropped from 13% in 2018 to 9% in 2023. It was far below the Asia-Pacific average. Despite this decline in domestic revenue generation, the country has been significantly ramping up defense spending over the same period. New Delhi has also linked cross-border terrorism and poor progress as far as the Financial Action Task Force vision is concerned by Pakistan to heighten security and credit risks for the ADB. For ADB too, it's a risk to give out such a high and hefty bailout to Pakistan. India has cited the multiple bailouts that the IMF has given to Pakistan in the past. Effectiveness of these past programs have also been questioned. The ADB was urged to ring-fence funds and tighten monitoring of these reforms. But clearly, all of that seems to have been ignored completely by both the IMF and the Asian Development Bank. Why are these funding agencies repeatedly bailing Pakistan out? Are they rewarding terror is a question many in India are asking. Because here's what the military and civilian government in Pakistan has been up to. Just 2 days ago, Pakistan's Punjab Assembly Speaker Malik Ahmed Khan was seen at a rally with US designated terrorists. That Pakistan politician then turned around and blamed India for the April 22nd Pahalgam attack, in which 26 civilians were killed. He went on to shield the plotter of the Pahalgam attack, Saifullah Kasuri, who was also on the dais with him. A few days ago, there was this event called Yawm-e-Takbir that was held, where Pakistani ministers, all belonging to the ruling party, were all seen at that particular event. What was worse was they were sharing stage with LET commanders. LET, a proscribed organization that has links to terror attacks in India, not one, but multiple of them. These terrorists have been tagged as martyrs by several within Pakistani administration, by the civilian administration, and by the army as well. Their coffins were wrapped in the Pakistani flag when they were bid adieu in this full fanfare by Pakistani army generals. Pakistani army officers were seen at their funeral as well. These are all terrorists that were killed by India in a precise strike in Operation Sindoor, and all we saw was them getting a platform in Pakistan. But why then do we see agencies like the IMF, like the Asian Development Bank, give money to Pakistan on the pretext of development? Because that's perhaps not where it's going. Let's open this up. Ashok Sajjanhar, former diplomat, joins us on this broadcast. Sushant Sareen, senior fellow at the ORF, and also a journalist, Lay Rocker, is also with us. Sushant Sareen, let me begin by asking you. You know, a lot of these organizations have been bailing out Pakistan for years together. The Asian Development Bank, in about 30-35 years, has multiple, at least 20 odd bailouts that have been given to Pakistan. All of that money has gone into increasing either military spending or using it to push terror into India. Are these agencies really blind to what happens to the money that they give Pakistan?
Poonam, they're not blind. In fact, when the FATF had put Pakistan on the grey list, the IMF had made it a part of the conditionalities that Pakistan had to deliver on the FATF wish list before they would get a program from the IMF. But look, we also need to understand that the IMF, World Bank and the others are not doing Pakistan a favor. Pakistan is a member of the IMF and it is entitled to receive balance of payment support. So when we raise the issue of terrorism and we say that, look, whatever money you are giving them as balance of payment support, and because money is fungible, this is going to be used for terrorism or for building up their war machine to fight India. I think we are missing the plot. What we really need to pin Pakistan on is the fact that they are actually playing a fiddle with the IMF, that the deals which they have signed with the IMF, they are not delivering on those, that the figures that they are presenting to the IMF are completely fudged. They are, if these figures had been presented by a private company, in for example, even in the United States, the CEO down, everybody would be thrown in jail for misleading the public. And yet you have these guys in the IMF who simply take whatever is given to them by the Pakistanis, whether it's for political reasons, whether it is for the fact that it will reflect poorly on them. I think that's a matter of speculation. But I think the mistake we make is that we go out there with and take a stand which is essentially political when we don't have the numbers to stop it. Now the Americans can. The Americans exercise the veto in IMF. So even if they were to take a political stand, they can get away with it. We can't. What we can do is create such a fuss in the IMF board meetings that people would be scared to give any kind of concession to the Pakistanis. The World Bank and the ADB are again different organizations. The World Bank has actually given money for Pakistan as budgetary support. When you give money for budgetary support, it can be used for defense, it can be used for whatever you want to do. Ultimately, all money is fungible, even IMF money is fungible. The Saudis, for example, have deposited money in Pakistan and said that this money is not to be used. But how do you say whether that money is being used or some other money is being used? There's no way you can put a foot down on it. And the Saudis
But
and the Chinese...
But there certainly has to be some sort of audit with these agencies, isn't it? I mean, there has to be some sort of checks and balances.
Well, that is exactly what I'm saying. The audits are there in the national accounts. And those national accounts don't make sense to anybody who has studied any economics will tell you that these figures are fudged, that they are overinflating their growth numbers, that there is a whole lot of fiddle they are playing on a range of issues. And they're not living up to the commitments that they have given to the IMF. So clearly there is something broken out there. What you need is somebody with a modicum of sense on how to analyze national income accounts and then slap the IMF, the World Bank, the ADB and tell them that, look, these guys are not living up to their commitment. I'll take half a second more. The EU, for example, it keeps giving them trade concession after trade concession, which we allowed them to do under Dr. Manmohan Singh. But the Pakistanis are supposed to follow certain conditionalities, certain conventions that the EU mandates that they have to follow to get these concessions. They don't follow that. They do a bit of an eye wash. They do it on paper, but they're not doing it. They're not implementing any of those mandates which they are supposed to be doing. And yet EU year after year keeps renewing the concessions which are being given. Why don't we create a fuss on these issues rather than going and talking to them on politics? Because that really, they have their own interests, we have our own interests. Let's shame them on their own laws. Let's pin them on their own
But
laws.
India is at least trying to do that with the United States. I mean, with this entire exercise where we sent our delegations to multiple countries, United States was one of them, where we did speak of why Operation Sindoor was necessary, why the escalatory point was the Pahalgam attack, and the victim and the perpetrator cannot be put on the same page. The hyphenation that the United States has been indulging in with India and Pakistan, the issue of putting India back on the FATF grey list did also come up. But Ray Locker, Pakistan has been using this kind of support from the international community to do whatever they feel like with the money that they've been getting. Now, the United States says that they back India, they back India's fight against terror, but all of this is in words. Why not in action? Like Sushant Sareen was pointing out, the United States has veto at the IMF. Why did they not block this bailout? Or why were not harder questions asked of Pakistan?
I don't know about why harder questions weren't asked. They should be. And obviously, I think the best way to go is to have Pakistan produce its economic numbers and fight them on that front. Look, the United States is no paragon of fiscal management. I mean, you look at this budget bill that's coming up in Congress right now, and it's going to blow another huge hole in the budget deficit and the national debt. So we don't have clean hands on this. I think in a lot of cases, it's a fear of what would happen if Pakistan doesn't get this money. Yeah, we all know that the money is fungible. It could go anywhere. But if they don't get the money, then what happens? And I don't think people really want to deal with that. And it's been going on like that for decades. I mean, that's why you see, like, in Vietnam, we kept sending more troops there because we were afraid of what was going to happen. Why we kept perpetuating the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq for the same reason. So, I mean, these things kind of have an inertia, a momentum of their own, and there's a fear of what will happen if you stop sending them money.
Now, how do we deal with that fear, Ashok Sajjanhar? I mean, the European Union, the United States, the international community, all has been showing interest in wanting to back India, but maybe they're not putting their money where their mouth is. Is that the case here?
Yeah, thank you very much, Poonam. You see, I think it's less of economics and less of financing that is going through these different multilateral development agencies. And it's more of geopolitics because, both all these countries, of course, they want good relations with India. They're against terrorism. They want to collaborate on terrorism because they look upon terrorism also as a curse and a scourge, by which they are also afflicted. But then as far as Pakistan is concerned, they find that they have interest there. As far as the United States is concerned, as far as the other Western countries, of course, they'll do what the United States tells them to do by and large. But the United States would like to see that, as far as Pakistan is concerned, it doesn't go completely under the control of China. You have them, in terms of the investments that are coming in from China, $60 billion for the China-Pakistan economic corridor. More than 80% of the defense weaponry of Pakistan is of Chinese origin. Just a few decades ago, it used to be the reverse as far as the United States is concerned. So, it's getting increasingly, in terms of getting into the bed with China, and its dependence upon China is growing, and the United States might think that, it needs to have some influence, some control on Pakistan. So for its own assessment, for its own interest, it would like to do that. And as I said, the others would also do. And of course, there are other reasons also. If it has the nuclear arsenal and, United States wants to keep track of it, have some sort of a control over it. If it, goes absolutely a way in which it has no influence whatsoever as far as Pakistan is concerned, that would not really meet its own geopolitical needs. And, finally, what we have been hearing also, Poonam, recent weeks and days, that there have been also this, economic and commercial interests of the United States, whether it is Mr. Trump's son who has interest in this Bitcoin enterprise.
The cryptocurrency deal that was very secretly done, many would say. And that's something that has brought the spotlight of why exactly the United States is behaving the way in which it is. But Sujant Sareen, the FATF is going to be meeting. They have their plenary sometime this month, sometime next week, if I'm not mistaken. Do you think India can actually put enough pressure on that organization to try and push Pakistan back into the grey list?
No, I think our task will be cut out for us. We can't do it on our own. So we will have to get some of the heavy swingers on our side. And I'm a little skeptic whether they will come on our side, the United States in particular. Sorry. Because if you get the US on your side, a lot of other pieces of the puzzle fall in place. And if the US is not on your side, none of the other pieces fall in place. Now, my only problem with what Ambassador Sajjanhar is saying is that while I don't disagree with what he said, but the question which I often ask is, have the Americans, by doing what they have been doing, continued to have leverage over Pakistan? I don't think so. Have the Americans, by soft pedaling on this Pakistan question, have they stopped Pakistan becoming a concubine state of the Chinese? No, they haven't. The Pakistanis are firmly embedded in the Chinese sphere. They are only stringing the Americans along because for a couple of things, they still need some American, they don't want to be on the wrong side of the US. And so, for example, they will require the IMF for the foreseeable future. They will require other international financial institutions, not just the multilateral ones, but also the private ones. And the US exercises enormous influence over that. So they will want to keep stringing along the Americans. But has that stopped them from delivering on anything that the Americans wanted? Please, when the Americans were in Afghanistan and fighting this war on terrorism, what side were the Pakistanis on? They were stringing the Americans even then. Americans got had and they didn't even realize it, that they were getting had. And the problem is that when this entire episode plays out, if the Americans could not force the Pakistanis to back off on something which was in America's direct interest, something that the Pakistanis were doing, which was killing American soldiers, undermining the entire war effort, and hundreds of billions of dollars that the Americans were spending in Afghanistan was going to dust. If they could not force Pakistan to change its behavior then, how can they do something now? And to think that they will be able to do something that keeps them away from going completely into bed with the Chinese, I think that's a pipe dream. They're already in bed with the Chinese. I don't know what remains.
Isn't that then more reason, Ray Locker, for the United States to firmly stand in India's corner? Because whatever they're trying with Pakistan, that clearly isn't working for them in the long run.
Well, that makes sense, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think this administration doesn't really care about anything in that part of the world. You mentioned this crypto deal. Who knows what's going on with that? And with the, epic corruption of this administration. I mean, it's just mind-boggling to sit here and watch what's happening with this administration and its total ineptitude in terms of dealing with the world, pulling out a USAID, let the World Health Organization, basically everything this administration has done has given China far more leverage around the world than it has ever had, and that includes Pakistan. I mean, I think any U.S. administration before this one knows that Pakistan is a wild card. You count on them at your own risk. I mean, after all, in 2011, we had to send a team of Navy SEALs into Abbottabad to kill bin Laden. He was right down the street from the Pakistani military academy. So there's not a lot of trust there. But I think,
and yet we see the kind of stance that President Trump seems to be taking, and that's something that boggles, I believe, many within America like yourself and here as well. I have to leave it there, but I thank you, gentlemen, for joining us here on this edition of The Right Stand and sharing your perspective. Before we wrap up this edition, I just want to get you a quick update of what's been transpiring with Turkish Airlines. DGCA, which is the watchdog of Indian Airlines here in India, has uncovered several safety and compliance violations by Turkish Airlines. This was during a recent surprise check. Multiple major Indian airports were where these checks were conducted. Those have now raised concerns over the airline's adherence to international and domestic aviation standards. These inspections took place in Hyderabad, Chennai, Delhi and Bengaluru, and this is what the DGCA found. Turkish Airlines was carrying explosives without any permission on board its flights, was one of the alarming revelation that has come to the fore with this particular surprise check. Dangerous goods were not declared on their required documents. There was an unauthorized marshaller that was found at the Bengaluru airport as well. No valid competency card for ground staff operations were found with Turkish Airlines either. An engineer was absent during arrival. A technician took over, which is not the SOP, which is not the standard operating procedure. No service level agreement with ground handling agents was present either. Ground handling operations lacked a formal handover. That's what the DGCA has now noted. As far as Hyderabad and Bengaluru airport are concerned, the equipment there is poorly monitored by the airline. Ladders, trolleys, GPUs are not properly accounted for, and that's something that the Turkish Airlines will now have to respond to the DGCA of why exactly none of these compliance measures were put in place.
Detailed safety oversight and ramp inspections were carried out by Indian Civil Aviation Regulatory Authority, that is DGCA, Director General of Civil Aviation, against all Turkish passenger and cargo planes in Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai and Bengaluru airports between May 29th and June 2nd. Even though these were done in the latest aftermath of military escalation between India and Pakistan and how Turkey openly came in support of that. But this inspection has come out with glaring lapses on part of Turkish Airlines operating in India. Now, to start with, marshaller competency was the first violation that was noticed. This means marshals are basically staff that guides an aircraft when it is on ground, they guided on ground with hand signaling and other expertise. It has been seen that the martial staff that airline was using did not have competent certification or were competent enough to operate on ground at the airside. Another violation that has been noticed is that dangerous goods, which is a category on which if you are carrying any good that lies in that category, you need to declare it and you need to inform the competent authorities and do proper file work to carry such goods to or from India as per the laid procedures by the DGCA. Those were being violated and no such paperwork was being done or competent authorities were being informed when Turkish Airlines were carrying goods that are categorized or classified as dangerous goods. In fact, in third violation, it has been noticed in both Hyderabad and Bengaluru airport, where Globe Ground India was providing ground services without a formal handover by the Celebi. Celebi is a firm that had recently been blacklisted by India because it's a Turkish firm, and following the recent escalation, it had been blacklisted, and it has been found that no service level agreement was in place between Turkish Airlines and its ground handling agent.
Co-presented by This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Checks at major Indian airports. Concerns have been raised over the airline's adherence to international and domestic aviation standards. Inspections took place in Hyderabad, Chennai, Delhi and Bengaluru. These inspections found that cargo classified as dangerous goods did not have the required permissions from the DGCA for transportation of explosives to and from India. These permissions were neither attached nor referenced in the dangerous goods declaration, which is a significant lapse that was identified at the Bengaluru airport, where the marshaller responsible to guide the aircraft during taxiing was found untrained. Civil Aviation Ministry has now asked Turkish Airlines to address these findings promptly and ensure full compliance with standards and recommendation practices. Anvit now joins us, getting us more details. Anvit, what does this mean for the future of the airlines? Is there any response coming in from Turkish Airlines to these queries that have been raised by the DGCA?
See, no response as such, but the DGCA guidelines are very strict when it comes to dangerous goods, which has recently been found on the Turkish planes that had landed at the 4 of the airports in Delhi, major airports in India, and the guidelines very clearly say that the laid down procedures, they should determine that as far as possible that the associated documentation of the aircraft that is carrying such goods should meet all norms. It has been found that the goods, that undeclared dangerous goods that was on board one of the Turkish Airlines plane, that had not been declared, and it had not been, the competent authorities had not been informed about it. In fact, one of the violations, grave violations, is also that the marshaller competency. Marshalers are basically staff who guide the plane when it is on ground. Their job is to safely and efficiently guide an aircraft when it is grounded. And it was also found at the Bengaluru airport that the marshaller handling ground operations, they lack proper authorization and valid competency for marshalling functions. And in fact, if we talk about the Hyderabad and airport, at both Hyderabad and Bengaluru airport, where Globe Grounds India was providing ground services, it was also found that without formal handover from Celebi, against which the Indian government had recently taken action, it was found that no service level agreement, that is SLA, was in place between Turkish Airlines and its ground handling agent. So these are grave violations that have been noticed in a surprise inspection that was carried out by DGC between 29th May and 2 June. And this was safety oversight and ramp inspection that was conducted at 4 airports: Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai and Bengaluru. And some grave violations have come before, against which Turkish Airlines officially has not commented so far, but these are important in the wake of the recent comment that Turkey had made, supporting barbaric attacks in Pahalgam, and also the aftermath thereafter that had happened, that tourists from India had, boycotted traveling to Turkey. Then Celebi's contract was also terminated. So following that, it certainly is an important development as far as India-Turkey relations are concerned.
Right, Anvit, thank you so much for getting us the latest on that front. Checks at major Indian airports. Concerns have been raised over the airline's adherence to international and domestic aviation standards. Inspections took place in Hyderabad, Chennai, Delhi and Bengaluru. These inspections found that cargo classified as dangerous goods did not have the required permissions from the DGCA for transportation of explosives to and from India. These permissions were neither attached nor referenced in the dangerous goods declaration, which is a significant lapse that was identified at the Bengaluru airport, where the marshaller responsible to guide the aircraft during taxiing was found untrained. Civil Aviation Ministry has now asked Turkish Airlines to address these findings promptly and ensure full compliance with standards and recommendation practices. Anvit now joins us, getting us more details. Anvit, what does this mean for the future of the airlines? Is there any response coming in from Turkish Airlines to these queries that have been raised by the DGCA?
See, no response as such, but the DGCA guidelines are very strict when it comes to dangerous goods, which has recently been found on the Turkish planes that had landed at the four of the airports in Delhi, major airports in India. And the guidelines very clearly say that the laid down procedures, they should determine that as far as possible that the associated documentation of the aircraft that is carrying such goods should meet all norms. It has been found that the goods, that undeclared dangerous goods that was on board one of the Turkish Airlines plane, that had not been declared, and it had not been, the competent authorities had not been informed about it. In fact, one of the violations, grave violations, is also that the marshaller competency. Marshalers are basically staff who guide the plane when it is on ground. Their job is to safely and efficiently guide an aircraft when it is grounded. And it was also found at the Bengaluru airport that the marshaller handling ground operations, they lack proper authorization and valid competency for marshalling functions. And in fact, if we talk about the Hyderabad and airport, at both Hyderabad and Bengaluru airport, where Globe Grounds India was providing ground services, it was also found that without formal handover from Celebi, against which the Indian government had recently taken action, it was found that no service level agreement, that is SLA, was in place between Turkish Airlines and its ground handling agent. So these are grave violations that have been noticed in a surprise inspection that was carried out by DGC between 29th May and 2 June. And this was safety oversight and ramp inspection that was conducted at 4 airports: Delhi, Hyderabad, Chennai and Bengaluru. And some grave violations have come before, against which Turkish Airlines officially has not commented so far, but these are important in the wake of the recent comment that Turkey had made, supporting barbaric attacks in Pahalgam, and also the aftermath thereafter that had happened, that tourists from India had boycotted traveling to Turkey. Then Celebi's contract was also terminated. So following that, it certainly is an important development as far as India-Turkey relations are concerned.
Right, Anvit, thank you so much for getting us the latest on that front.
This is News 18 Network. India's largest news network.
Checks at major Indian airports. Concerns have been raised over the airline's adherence to international and domestic aviation standards. Inspections took place in Hyderabad, Chennai, Delhi and Bengaluru. These inspections found that cargo classified as dangerous goods did not have the required permissions from the DGCA for transportation of explosives to and from India. These permissions were neither attached nor referenced in the dangerous goods declaration, which is a significant lapse that was identified at the Bengaluru airport, where the marshaller responsible to guide the aircraft during taxiing was found untrained. Civil Aviation Ministry has now asked Turkish Airlines to address these findings promptly and ensure full compliance with standards and recommendation practices. Anvit now joins us, getting us more details. Anvit, what does this mean for the future of the airlines? Is there any response coming in from Turkish Airlines to these queries that have been raised by the DGCA?
See, no response as such.
Good evening, you're watching Brass Tacks. I'm Zakir Jacob. A day after 11 people were killed in that unfortunate stampede at the Chinnaswamy Stadium in Bangalore, today the state government has decided to book the RCB franchise owners and the event management company DNA for what happened. They've also decided to hand over the case to the CID of the Karnataka police. But there is a glaring lapse and a glaring question that stares everyone in the face. What about the state itself? Can the state absolve itself of all responsibility? The Chief Minister, the Deputy Chief Minister, the Home Minister, the Police Chief, the State Cricket Board, all of these entities, these individuals are just as culpable. But somehow, the police has decided to give all of these folks a clean chit already and decided instead to go after the low-hanging fruit, which is the event organizers, the private event management company and the RCB franchise. Not to suggest that none of them have a role to play or none of them need to be held to account.